back to She Talks Green. Today we are diving into a topic that affects every single one of us: climate change and its impact on our health. From rising temperatures to worsening air quality, we are seeing how our environment is changing and it is taking a toll on our bodies in ways we never imagined. Joining me today is my friend Dr. Karan Thakur, a healthcare policy leader working with the Asian Development Bank and Apollo Hospitals. Karan has been at the forefront of advocating for sustainable health systems that can withstand the growing pressures of climate change. And today, he's here to share insights on what this means for our health and how we can prepare for a healthier, more resilient future. Thank you so much for joining us today, Karan.
Thank you, Arpita. It's a pleasure to be here.
Karan, climate change is often seen as an environmental crisis, but it has a lot of impact on our health as well. Can you start with just helping us understand how climate change is impacting us? What are the direct or indirect ways it is impacting our health?
Absolutely, Arpita. I think it's important to take a step back. When we talk of, what is the constituent of good human health, the environmental factors play a key determinant role. And we've seen this not now, but for the past century or maybe even a couple of centuries. We know that access to clean drinking water, nutritious food, clean air, and economic opportunities that come because of economic growth are all important factors that contribute towards the health and well-being of an individual and the community. Now, as climate change happens and is occurring, and we are seeing the impacts of this on the environment, it is only logical that the impacts will also be felt on human health. So, as our air becomes more polluted, as water scarcity or food scarcity worsens, and we are seeing the economic effects in terms of migration or climate migrants, there is a rub-off effect on health at the population level. But at the individual level, today we know that climate change and the various facets of it, whether it is rising temperatures, whether it is heat waves, whether it is ocean acidification, all of this is actually creating an environment which is directly impacting human health. Let's take a small example of vector-borne disease. We know that vector-borne disease were endemic in tropical countries like India and others. But today we are seeing dengue, and related vector-borne diseases, including the resurgence of malaria, in countries and regions that had never ever faced it. By some estimates, just in the United States, the climatic suitability of vector-borne disease is increasing by close to 100 miles per year. So we are talking about in 5 years to have more than 500 square kilometers being affected or impacted by dengue or vector-borne disease, which was unheard of in the North Americas, or at least not as problematic. We are seeing the same thing in India, where we are seeing the impact of poor air really impacting respiratory illnesses, asthma, so on and so forth. Along with this, there is another challenge that emerges. We have a cyclical, evidence to show that there are cyclical trends in disease patterns. We knew that dengue happened during the monsoon seasons or just after. We knew that there was a flu season which happens in the winter and then spills into the spring. But today we are actually seeing, because of climate change, all of these merging into one continuous health crisis, and therefore it is becoming such a challenge. And at the same time, we are also at the health community, and as the health community, we are seeing health systems being impacted by climate change itself. Because of air pollution, because of heat waves. We've seen the pandemic, but we do feel that there would be some zoonotic spillovers caused because of climate change, which could lead to future pandemics or epidemics. And lastly, things like floods and hurricanes, which are actually shutting down healthcare services and the provision of healthcare services, which becomes an additional challenge on how climate change is impacting human health.
Do you think the health impact of climate change is often overlooked, especially in vulnerable countries like India? Because we are at a higher risk when it comes to climate change. And we are also an emerging economy, and there are many vulnerable, underprivileged communities. How are we looking at the situation in this light?
So let's unpack that. That's a very important question. Obviously, the disease burden of various disease cohorts, whether it is cancers, whether it is metabolic diseases like diabetes, whether it is heart disease, all of these were occurring, and we've seen an upward trend in them in the past 2, 3 decades. And there are various reasons for that, whether it is the modern lifestyle, sedentary lifestyles, whether it is calorie dense foods, or inactivity. Various reasons are contributing towards the rise of these so-called lifestyle diseases. It's a problematic term, but we'll just bucket it under that. But at the same time, we are also seeing that this is becoming worse because of the impacts of climate change on these conditions. For example, we know that there is a direct causation linkage that you can find between smoking of tobacco and lung disease and lung cancer. But today we see that the incidence of lung cancer hasn't dramatically declined the way it should have, even though the use of tobacco has fairly tapered and falling in most countries. And a lot of it is now being attributed to poorer air, to fumes, to what the urban environment has become. And as India urbanizes, a lot more of these problems will come into smaller towns, villages, peri-urban, peri-rural areas, which are becoming towns or cities, where these problems will also have a rub-off effect. Now, you spoke about the underprivileged, and I think that's where the major crisis of this is being felt, disproportionately felt, and also it is not being addressed with the same war footing that we are doing for, let's say, urban centers. So, for example, urban heat has become a very major issue that is being addressed by the climate health community, by the health community as a whole, and by the civil administration and governments. But we see that urban heat is not the only impact of heat in a geography. In rural areas, the impact of heat is also being felt, although in different ways and means. Now, dovetail this with the fact that there are resource constraints on the health system to begin with. The type of spending that we need on healthcare is continues to remain a challenge, not just for India but for many countries in the South Asia and the African continent. Now, as the challenge increases, and the funding and the absorptive capacity of health systems to absorb those funds to use for health services, we are going to see a rising challenge. And therefore it's important for us to bring in the centrality of climate change and the need for sustainable, resilient health infrastructure, because we will not get to the aim of health for all if we don't factor this in today.
Absolutely. I think that is a very important aspect, given that India does have a huge population, and larger section of society still struggle to get their basic amenities and access to healthcare. So this certainly becomes a very important aspect. Karan, we spoke about a lot of physical impact of climate change on health. You spoke about how it is leading to an increased number of dengue or malaria or even asthma. But there's also another aspect associated to it, and I was reading about it that mental health is also getting affected because of climate change. There's a lot of climate induced anxiety, anger, trauma after natural disasters. We recently saw a very traumatic visuals coming from Wayanad. How are we dealing with this? And first of all, what is the relevance or what is the connection behind this? And what are we doing to tackle this aspect of climate change impact?
So, Arpita, if you look at mental health and you look at the various aspects of what constitutes good mental health, we are seeing climate change impacting multiple areas, and I'll break it down into how that is actually taking place. First, climate anxiety initially was taken as something a little airy fairy. That it is something which is probably person dependent, but really not a mental health condition. Research now, very clear evidence is out there that this is becoming a sort of a mini crisis within the mental health space itself, this anxiety that is there. Now, within the younger community, the Gen Zs, those who are getting into the workforce, the climate anxiety also spills over into economic anxieties. Will I have a job that will be secure for the future? Will I have a country, city, or community where I could live? I have lived here, or generations have lived here. Will I be able to continue and do so? So that does cause that anxiety which is building up. At the same time, we are seeing climate induced migrations increasing. Now, if you're going to be uprooted from your community, if you're going to be uprooted from the school that you have gone to, if you have been uprooted from the job that you did, or the community that you interacted with, and now are forced to migrate because of climate change, it is going to cause a lot of anxiety and even mental health, diagnosable mental health conditions, which could extend up to depression and others. Now, the third aspect of this is what you spoke about on the tragedies that are taking place because of events like cyclones, hurricanes, and others. And there we are seeing a loss of agency. There, people are feeling that they're not in control of themselves, of their households, and of the community that they live in, and that is causing a lot of unsaid, unspoken fear about what the future then will look like. And lastly, I spoke about the economic impacts on, say, the younger generation. When we have flooding, when we have hurricanes, we are also impacting the economic means of those people. If you are a fisherman who lives on the coast and now have been asked to move inland to protect yourself and your household because of climate change, your livelihood depended on living next to the ocean. But today it has become very dangerous, both for your health and for your well being and even for your life. The impact that that has as you move inside, you don't have the skills now to operate in that new economic reality of yours, is causing a lot of anxiety, and unfortunately this will only grow. And again, I am reiterating the fact that the healthcare community, and when I say that, it means practitioners in various specialized fields also, to start looking at these areas, because they will become top of mind. For urban people like us, I mean, our reality is also not that different. I mean, today, if it rains very heavily or there's unseasonal rain, the first thought goes into, will there be a flood somewhere? Will there be, will I be held up in traffic for 8, 9 hours? And we hear horror stories every monsoon season. So this is a lived reality for the cross section of society. But I wanted to start with the youth and those who are impacted and do not have the economic means, and then to us who have better means, because I think the spectrum should look at that continuum rather than the other way around, which is how conversations are usually sort of structured.
What is the healthcare system currently doing to address this challenge?
So I think it's not just the healthcare community, but also what is happening at the education level. I think children today are becoming more and more aware, both because of their surroundings, but also because of curriculum talking to them about the impact of climate change, and the new education policy that we have in India, and many other education policies across the world are now actually firming in some of the principles around climate change and the impacts and what you can do to that very impressionable age of school students. We are also seeing that in medical education, gradually the medical curriculum is also starting to talk about issues of climate change and its impact on physical health, and hopefully in the future it will also include mental health. But again, we need to fast track that. The healthcare community on its own is on a regular really putting out information which is relevant for communities to use, whether it is on heat waves, air pollution, vector borne disease, other infections, clean drinking water, so on and so forth. And at the same time, at least people like me are appealing that there should not be alarmism around it. Alarmism is very different from being informed. I think it is good to leave some bits of agency to people so that they know that they have something in within themselves to really respond to this. So it has to be multifactorial, and our response currently is making some good steps towards that direction, but obviously more needs to be done.
Uh, We also spoke about the Delhi air pollution, and we keep making headlines year after year, not just in India, but at at a global stage now. Is there truly no solution to tackle this situation? Because we keep hearing from the governments, from the policymakers, so many suggestions, so many studies coming in. What is really happening, and what can we also do to protect ourselves from this adverse effect of air pollution?
Yes, I think it's been unfortunate that what we've been seeing in the Delhi air quality and the action that has been taken on it for the past decade has not lived up to the expectation of anybody. I think even the government will not deny it. The actors who are involved in controlling the air quality will not deny it, and citizens will not deny it. I think this is a fact that we all are living with. Having said that, and this might seem as if I am giving a long-winded answer to this, but there is a policy that is now in place. There has been a mechanism that has been put in place which involves states. So earlier it was only Delhi trying to respond to the crisis. Today we have more states and their governments part of the process. There is an acceptance that if the adjudicating authority, in this case the CQAM, takes a decision, all the geographies that are part of it are also going to be responding. So I think the policy framework has finally come into place. Now, will this automatically lead to a change in Delhi's air? Unfortunately, no, because we know the cause of the bad air is multifactorial. We know that there is a stubble issue, but that's not the major issue. That is a an episodic annual issue. It needs to be addressed, but that's what it is. It's episodic and it's annual. Now we have a problem of vehicular emissions. We have a problem of construction related emissions which are coming out, or dust and other pollutants which are being released. And we have rapid urbanization which is taking place. Delhi NCR is becoming far too big to be managed the way it should be, like other megapolises are, and even there they don't have the challenges that we have. So it is going to be heavy lifting that is required for the next 5 years. But I think we have very good examples. When Delhi moved to CNG, it led to dramatic improvements in air quality, congestion, other issues. When we brought in the metro, again we saw a lot of people starting to use it, reduced congestion, therefore reduced air pollution, and so on and so forth. And today we are seeing a massive electrification of the fleets, which is happening, and I think the impacts of that will be felt in the coming few years. Having said that, I think we cannot wait. The sections of population that are being impacted is everyone, whether it is young school going children, right up to the aging population, or the more seniors. They're all being impacted. Now, what can one do? I think we cannot come in the way of our economic reality of going out to work and contribute towards society and the economy. So we have to continue to do that. But at the same time, I think there are small steps that we can take. Whether it is to use public transport more often, we should really take that up. And I think it is incumbent on people like us, and when I say us, it's the urban sections of society, or the middle classes and above, who need to do that heavy lifting. The second is that we really need to look at the choices that we make. Today there are options available to us. Do you really want to buy that diesel car? Or do you really need that additional car, for yourselves? Can you let go of that, so that we can contribute towards decongesting Delhi and other cities which are also facing the same issues? And when we are making choices, can we also look at things like solar panels? Can we look at rainwater harvesting? Can we look at those things that we at the community level can do? Now, I know resident welfare associations, RWAs, have really taken this on a war footing, and it is encouraging to see some of those signs actually starting to take shape. Lastly, I think Delhi needs to improve its green cover. It is a green city otherwise when you compare it with other big metropolitan cities across the world. But I think over the years, as rapid urbanization has taken place, some of that green cover has been lost. And I think that is an area of concern which we really need to look at. And lastly, I think as citizens, When have we asked, our politicians to include this as part of the manifesto, or asked this as a question when we meet our public representatives? I'm very sorry to say that we have not taken that onus upon ourselves to really ask for better air, to ask for cleaner communities, to ask for other issues. So I think we, the citizen, need to feel empowered and ask those questions, because the response will definitely come.
Certainly, I think you've made a very important point here about asking, because it's your right. So this is certainly very important for all of us, for our children's health, for our parents' health. But just couple of pointers here. When we speak about citizens making good decisions about whether I want to buy a diesel car or I want to buy an electric car, or should I walk a small distance versus should I take out my car. I also often feels that infrastructure also needs to support these choices, because as much as I can talk about myself, I love walking, right? But in India, specifically in Delhi NCR, I can't think about walking a lot because I don't think we have that kind of infrastructure. Expecting people to walk in 48-degree Celsius temperatures, I don't think that's practical. We have seen the congestion that is often seen at all the times in India, or rather in most of the metro cities. How do we sort of encourage government to also support us with the right infrastructure, or is that even possible? Because we
Yes.
are very vulnerable when it comes to climate.
That's true. See, walkable cities is a concept that is being spoken about, but again, a lot of it is a Western construct because of the weather, climate, and other factors that are there, including population density. Realistically speaking, is that really possible in Delhi NCR? Yes, well, within certain limited geographies, within gated colonies, within others, I am sure that is possible, and the more that we can do is a good thing. But compare ourselves with a country of our size and scale, let's say the United States. United States also has that problem where there is a heavy reliance on vehicles to move people rather than walking or public transport. And I think India has sort of also followed that because of various reasons. Second is, I think this is a bit of a chicken and egg situation that we are in. Because people don't use public transport and buy more vehicles, therefore more roads and flyovers are being made, and a lot of the spaces which could be used for other means of, including walking, cycle tracks, bus lanes, have receded to the back burner. So I think this is something that urban planners should look at, and I think this is what urban planners have been looking at. If you see the number of foot over bridges which have come up in New Delhi, closed tunnels which are connecting parts of from one end of a major high street to the other, there are those mechanisms that have been put into place, but the challenge remains enforcement. We know that a lot of encroachment of public infrastructure takes place. A lot of encroachment of things like footpaths takes place, and I think that is the challenge. Once we do this, once we approach this from the urban governance lens, a lot can be improved. I think the small steps have been taken in that direction. And I think as you reduce the dependence on central Delhi, on downtown Delhi, on the city of Delhi, and as you find more economic means and freedoms in the area that you reside in, which could be the suburbs of Delhi, that load will also reduce. So I think it is a work in progress. Um, Although this year and the year previous, we have seen the situation actually deteriorate and rather than improve. So that is something which is very alarming for any citizen. That we should have had a situation which should have improved, but in the past year or so we have not seen that, and there are various reasons for that, and the listeners and viewers will know the reasons. But I think if we marry good urban planning and design with choices that are given to people, people will make the right choice.
Often we have seen that every year when the peak air pollution season comes in, especially in Delhi NCR, somehow, and I completely agree that crop burning definitely adds to the problem. But somehow it becomes a political tool to kind of toggle between governments and blame it on the farmers. Because sitting here in my house, I'm definitely not going to speak to a farmer, possibly, and really get to the depth of, is it really the only cause of Delhi's air pollution? Or there are many other factors that we need to look into. So just for my for the sake of our listeners, I definitely want to address this, that is it the only cause, because that leads to the peak air Delhi pollution, or there are many other things, and somehow unfortunately this becomes this comes under the spotlight.
See, the area that starts from western Pakistan, their entire geography right up to Afghanistan, towards East Pakistan, and from Amritsar right up till Delhi, up to the Gangetic Plains, traditionally has had an issue of poor air quality at this time of the year, which we are getting into. So there are some geographic and geological factors also at play. I'm not an expert, so I will not further comment on that. But that is an understood problem. This is a problem that if you read the press in our neighboring country, there also they talk about poor air quality in their national capital, in their major cities like Lahore and all of that. So there is a problem that extends from there up till here at this time of the year. Number two, if you see air quality during the year, while it is poor, but it has ups and downs. So there are those various factors that are contributing towards it. What doesn't change is that vehicular emissions, construction related emissions, are areas which are well within our control. So while we may not be able to change that, we can certainly change some of the practices that we are seeing here. Let's be very honest. You see any construction site in New Delhi, are really the safety precautions to make sure that dust is not really released into the air, or hot mixing of concrete and others is not taking place in a more safe way. Let's be real. We are seeing what is happening around us. That is contributing in the entire year. Now, what happens at this time of the year, and this is again not a defense of stubble burning, and I think it's an activity that should have been stopped a long time ago, because the means that are now being provided could have easily been provided 10 years ago. But anyway, policy is a process. Today, we are seeing that, that really contributes to worsening the problem, along with this change of a change of the weather that takes place. So it is a major issue, no doubt about it. And this is an issue which cuts across state boundaries and geography. So I am not getting into whether this is one state's problem or three states' problem, depending on who's in charge. But it is a problem that the farming community also has. They do not have the economic means to get rid of stubble, and there's no easier way than to burn it. So if we don't provide those means, and again now those are being made available, whether it is machines that can actually take the stubble out, and that can be used to you can sell that to various industries, or cooperatives, that is emerging as an area that farmers are more progressive farmers at least are getting into it. And the other is that there's been ample research which is done on chemicals which can safely be used to get rid of the stubble. But I think a lot more education also needs to be done on the effectiveness of these solutions, because when you have traditional practices which have been done for decades, if not centuries, then to come up with a new solution and offer it as a replacement will need a lot of building trust amongst the community to say, well, yeah, I think we will go ahead with this. But it is not the only reason. But at this particular time, unfortunately, because of crop cycles, and because of this poor air, and because of Delhi having poor air to begin with, it really just exacerbates the problem. So by no means is it the only one, but if we could have it out of the way, it would cause the air to dramatically improve.
Certainly, I think that is very important to look into, because we can't be living like this year after year when we know that there are solutions that do exist and can be implemented. Now, because we are talking about climate, farmers, another question that comes to my mind is that we are seeing how climate change is impacting farming. There's flooding, there is lack of water, crazy monsoons. It is all impacting the agriculture as well. How is this sort of related to the food security of India? Because I have been reading many reports suggesting that the impact of climate change on farming is directly related to a lot of malnutrition, a lot of other food related diseases as well that we are seeing picking up in India, especially among vulnerable communities.
Absolutely. India's dependence on agriculture as a means of an economic source has reduced over the past few decades, but it continues to remain the mainstay of the vast section of Indian society. So it is central to the economic well-being of a large majority, maybe a majority, when you take in all those who are involved in agriculture or allied services. So it is an area of concern. That's number one. And number two is, just like what I spoke about, the impact of climate change on human health. We are seeing the reversal of the gains, potential reversal of the gains that one made during the Green Revolution, to take place because of climate change impact on agriculture and the produce. Now, India is for many years now producing enough food to feed every Indian, and in fact, to also support many other parts of the world. And I think this has been a great leap forward that India has been able to do in the past few decades. At the same time, we are seeing that the as urbanization takes place, as industrialization takes place, many people are moving to other opportunities away from agriculture. So there is that move. But as that happens, the new economic means are also contributing towards the climate crisis. Agricultural practices itself and by themselves are also contributing towards the climate crisis through the release of methane. Stubble burning is one small example, but is a example, and the use of groundwater for certain crops which demand a lot more water. So again, like I said, the healthcare community itself also contributes to the climate crisis. The agricultural production in just its manner of doing also contributes towards the climate crisis. So these are these three aspects that one really needs to look at. A, the reversals, potential reversals that we are seeing because of climate change on agricultural produce, the impact of people moving from agriculture to other sources and therefore contributing towards worsening of these environmental determinants. And third is the impact that the agriculture sector itself has on the contributory effect that it has on the climate crisis. So all three need to be addressed very differently. But to limit my answer to what you were saying about food security, so the gains that we have made to become food secure might start getting undermined in many parts of the country because of heat waves, because of new and emerging type of pests that are going to be resistant to the type of countermeasures that we have, i.e., pesticides, fertilizers, and so on and so forth, and other insecticides that we have. And third is that the food security can have regional and geographic impact, which would mean that people would then perforce be forced to leave that area, which was very productive for them, in terms of the crops that they grew. So we might see a condition where the availability of food, the availability of nutritious food, and the availability of crops or good agricultural constituents, the soil, the environment, the water, reducing and therefore causing some sort of a migration to take place from those areas. These are three distinct areas, and all three have an impact on human health. We have finally, India has done tremendous amount of work in reducing stunting and malnutrition. We have done, I think one of the greatest things that Indian healthcare system has been able to do is to reduce infant mortality, maternal mortality, and under five mortality. A lot of this was because of clean drinking water, food, and because of education. Now, two of those in that triad which helped are potentially going to be impacted or are being impacted by climate change, and therefore they will impact all of those progress that we've made. All the more reason that we should talk about how we can move towards greener agriculture, and I know that there is a lot of movement towards that, and you'll probably also speak to experts on what that is going to mean. Second is that we have to make sure that we move towards crops which are more sustainable. We know that only wheat and rice is not going to do it because it is going to have an impact on the environment. And three is that we need to have very good, the entire spectrum of from produce, the so-called farm to fork, needs to be even more strengthened so that the produce that we have is not wasted. Because by some estimates, India produces, let's say, X amount of food grain, only X by 2 reaches the market. So there is a lot of loss in transmission, as it were, from where it is produced to when it is consumed. And we need to really get mindful of that.
Karan, how are we leveraging these technologies that is really disrupting a lot of these sectors, whether it is farming, whether it is healthcare? We see how AI is helping us generate so much data about a lot of patterns, suggesting how we can take care of these situations, finding more solutions. How are we using all these technologies in India for not just farming, of course, because there is a correlation of farming, food security, and then health, but also assessing climate induced diseases and risk that we face today?
So I think that's a very important question because technology is fast seeping into the response to climate and health. And I'll speak about agriculture little less more about this since it's an area that I know more about. Um, so if you see, early warning systems are today actually being used by state governments and health systems. They're in fact even being used by private health systems, hospitals, to really forecast what the impending climatic conditions is going to do in terms of disease prevalence, help in surveillance and response. So we've seen this. There's an example of Karnataka where they've used real-time data to see where the hotspots of dengue outbreak are in the Bengaluru, metropolitan area, and they could actually then direct action towards controlling the vector in those hotspots. It is also being then used for next year's preparedness by the state health officials to say, well, X colony or Y region is more endemic for various reasons, and therefore we should be more mindful, and therefore it's a better directing of resources towards those areas which need help. So that's one way of early warning systems that are being used for vector-borne disease. Number two, there is a lot of collaboration happening between the Indian Meteorological Department, IMD, and the data that they generate, and they produce fantastic amounts of data in terms of predicting how climatic conditions are changing over days, weeks, and in some cases even make analysis for months and years. And that is now being used to predict heat waves more accurately so that you could be better prepared for how you respond to it. And when you see heat plans now coming up in various states and for various cities, they are going to rely on a lot of that data coming from the Met Department to guide policy making. So that's the second technology which is being used. And because India is now one of the leaders in satellite technology and space, as it were, we are tapping onto the investments made there to respond to climate and health, which is again a good example of how an intersection can work. Number three is we have these technologies that can help people respond to their medical condition given the climatic condition. And we are seeing wearables, we are seeing automated prompts on the weather condition, and what precautions need to be taken right on our smartphones, or even tagged on to us. Doctors are also now using that data that is being generated through wearables to better predict and better analyze how you're doing in response to a particular condition. So, for example, if I have a data log of how on a few days my asthma was worse and correlated to the AQI, you can actually get a very good picture of what is impacting you when. And that helps. And then there are other technologies which are doing predictive analysis at the individual level, and which take into account environmental factors as well, to say, this is going to be the likelihood of you developing certain conditions because of your own bodily factors, your own health status currently, and your habits, and the environment that is there. So across the spectrum, we are seeing that technology is moving very quickly into climate and health, into that space. And then there are other technologies which are also helping health systems. So whether it is solarization, a very simple thing, if you solarize a primary health center, it can function 24/7. If you solarize, you can have refrigerators which can store vaccines, which can respond to the needs of the community without having to without having to really rely on a very robust supply chain, a cold supply chain. So solarization, which seems very simple, is just very nascent. We feel that solarization will really have a huge impact on building resilient health infrastructure and health systems, as a way forward. And similarly, we are seeing things like solar pumps. We are seeing heat pumps, which are being used across the health sector now, to make the health infrastructure more resilient, in terms of, if a climate crisis were to, or a a weather event were to take place, the center continues to provide services, because that's its primary job, to do it during peacetime, but also to during climate wartime.
Certainly, I think technology, especially technologies like AI, has a huge role to play. While of course we are still figuring out the frameworks of how to use this technology in a safe manner, but there's a lot of
I
potential.
heard this thing about AI. We are still trying to figure out whether we have discovered the next penicillin or the next atom bomb. So I think it's somewhere in between.
Yes, and I think it will be interesting to see how our leaders are going to progress and make the right choices when it comes to AI. Since we are talking about, the global stage and leaders, certainly the impact of climate change on health has taken a center stage, especially in the last couple of years. We've seen how we progressed during COP last year, important policies coming into play, and government focusing more on this aspect. Can you explain where we stand when it comes to India in terms of our climate action plan and the focus on health, the public health, which is the most important thing?
So India has a national adaptation climate adaptation plan, and that is for the entire economy country. At the most broad level that you can think of, and within that it has various constituents of what each sector needs to do, whether it's the energy sector, whether it is the health sector, the agriculture sector, and so on and so forth. So the national adaptation plan is something that we are bound by. It is something that we report, It is something that we need to we are expected to live up to and report on progress at each of the COPs that happen annually. So there is a robust plan in place. Within that, what is called HNAPs, which is the health adaptation plans, are also being formulated now within each state, and this is being done under the aegis of the National Program on Climate Change and Human Health, which sits within the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And there again, each state is now creating an action plan on climate and health. So I think as a country, we are probably amongst the first to have really moved so quickly to actually have state level action plans. And now, in fact, there is talk about moving it to the district level as well. So each district will have a climate health plan. And again, this is something that is not spoken about, which is not being recognized enough. I think it's important that people start knowing that actually there is work that is being done at the national and at the policy level. So that's one part of the equation, as it were. The second is that we are bound by some targets that have been set. We have set for ourselves, under various frameworks, but very clearly outlined by the Prime Minister in COP26 in Glasgow, where we were talking about reducing our energy intensity by 50% by 2030, by moving towards higher dependency on renewables, a gradual reduction in coal, so on and so forth. Now, all of those ambitions for the country are not going to happen or take place till the time each sector contributes, and therefore each sector is now being pushed, prodded, and asked about how they're going to contribute towards those five principles that we laid out for ourselves at COP26, and with subsequent clarifications. And then obviously we also have plans which are specific to targets which are specific to each country, common but differentiated, which we need to report on. And again, India has put forward, what it intends to do. And more broadly, we have said that we'll become net zero by 2070. So how does India move towards that? Each sector is has a plan in place. So that's the second bit of the equation in terms of how we are responding this more in terms of the global outlook. And third is on the principles. We know that climate change and its response has three broad pillars. You could mitigate it, you can adapt to it, and you have to build resiliency towards it, right? So while there is an understanding, it's an unwritten understanding that private healthcare should work on adaptation and resilience building, but they can do a lot more on mitigation. They have the means available to help reduce their own carbon impact, their carbon footprint, and the impact that they have on climate change by moving towards renewables, by actively seeking out ways by which they mitigate their own carbon footprint. As the Indian health sector still needs to grow, we will need a dramatically enhanced and high reach health service in the years ahead. We're just getting started. But as India builds that health system even more deeply and integrated and high tech, we will also need to build adaptation techniques as we do that. So solarization and other means of adaptation are very central to the public health infrastructure at the moment. And resilience is again going to become very important. For example, you took you spoke about the floods in Wayanad. We need health infrastructure that continues to deliver before, during, and after that flood. So that is a level of resiliency that really needs to be built. So that's the third part of the puzzle. That how does each part of the health sector respond to this, looking at those three principles or even more. And finally, I think the clinical community is now starting to talk about the impact of climate change on the impact of heat waves, on how it is impacting your current conditions, for example your heart disease or chances of a stroke or asthma. And I think there we need a better identification of what is causing what. And I think a lot more medical research needs to be directed towards how climate change is impacting human health in a scientific manner, which holds steady in the face of people who may be denying the impact. So that's the fourth bit that the clinical community needs to do. As a step that we have taken so far, the setting up of the national program was, I think, amongst the first things that we did, which amongst the first in the world. Number two, we have a robust strategy in terms of which part of the sector needs to do what. And we've got the health community that needs to respond or is responding. But undergirding all of this is the challenge of financing. And I think where the money will come from, both for, let's say, private healthcare entities, and I talk to a lot of my colleagues in private healthcare, and they all say that, well, we need to generate our own funds, and if we are going to be investing in technologies which help reduce our carbon footprint, where are the benefits that we will get for making that investment? So that investment case, of course, there is a moral investment case, but other than that, the financial investment case is something that one is thinking about, and there probably green financing, green bonds can help some of those problems, and they're just coming in. And then funding for the public health system. There are going to be competing claims for the pot of money, even if the money increases, for expanding health services for each citizen. Within that, how do we get not just a side pocket, a proper alignment of expenses and projects for climate and health is something that we in the community are really looking forward to.
Is India's healthcare system prepared to withstand all the impact that we are seeing today and we are going to face in the future? I heard you, and I think we are doing a lot, yes. But do you think we are prepared well to address all these challenges, to be better prepared for future?
We would be foolhardy to say that we are prepared. And I would like to come back to your show 5 years from now and say that we are much better prepared, and probably 10 years from now and say that we are prepared. So I think that is a realistic time frame that we have. For a lot of people, this, they may say, on the one hand, you're talking about urgency, and on the other hand, you're giving, a 10-year horizon, where there is a dichotomy there. And I appreciate that criticism. The fact of the matter is that there are competing claims. India is a complex country. We have complex set of issues within healthcare itself. I will limit myself to healthcare. We have a problem of access. We have a problem of equitable healthcare. We have a problem of barriers, whether it is gender, social, economic, and other barriers to access healthcare. And there is a problem of a mixed system of delivery. So everybody cannot get access to public health infrastructure or public health, and therefore they have to rely on private healthcare systems. Those are challenges that we've not gotten over. Number two, India is also facing the challenge, a twin challenge of communicable diseases, which unfortunately because of climate change are coming back, malaria, dengue, so on and so forth, and also of non-communicable diseases, which again is being made worse by climate change. So we need to address those. Monies need to be outlaid there. So the good part is, and I'm an optimist, the good part is we have a plan. We have some resources that are getting aligned towards it. There are people like me who are shouting on top of buildings and saying this is an important aspect, and we are seeing the change that has happened in 2 years. This is becoming central to our discussion within the healthcare community and with powers that be. So I am hopeful that because we've got this momentum going, we will see impacts that will be much faster in the years ahead. Lastly, I think technology is fast changing. You spoke about AI. You also spoke about other technologies which are creating impact on human health. We are all waiting that this exponential rise of technological interventions will only improve adoption. So today, when we go out and shop and we say that, look, I need to look for solutions on climate and health, tell me what do you have? We are finding that solutions sometimes are maybe not good fits. In some cases, they are very good fits. Some cases, they are not very good fits. And in many other cases, they're trying to be force fit into healthcare. But we are seeing now there is a demand because of the health system asking for solutions. We have innovators who are now actually thinking about how this particular problem can be solved for healthcare. So I think in the next 2-3 years, technological adoption on climate and health will improve, and we will see a fast-paced change. All of this does not take away the fact that climate change and climatic events are unpredictable. Even our best of hypotheses or evidence is only as good as today. How this dramatically changes over the years is something that we are frankly we don't know, and therefore we are not ready. And lastly, I think a global response to a global crisis is really what is required. And there again, I think how the world moves will also impact how India moves.
I think, Karan, you just mentioned that even with all the technologies, even with all the research and data, we are certainly going to step into a future where climate related events are going to increase. Unfortunately, with even with all the efforts that we are putting, it will take some time to probably see the real impact and results. I think it would be really great if we could leave our listeners with some tips, insights, and let's talk a little more about the solution. So, what can individuals or communities do at their own level to protect themselves, to protect their immediate surroundings, families? And then let's also talk a little bit about what proactive measures at an individual level will really help, not just to protect ourselves, but to also contribute towards climate action.
I think the first and the most important responsibility that we have as individuals is to take charge of our own health. I think we have that capacity to respond, which we are not doing in the types and numbers that we should. What do I mean by that? A simple preventive health check is something that we all should be doing. It is something that is within our control and will help us actually recognize our own current health status and what we can do about it. You may not be able to change or ensure that there is no heat wave where you live, but if you know that you are particularly vulnerable because of the heat wave, because of a particular condition that you have, you can respond to it better. So I think knowledge is power in this case, and I find far too many people, and shockingly far too many young people, who don't want to undergo a health check because for for various reasons. But the one that really gets my goat is, oh, what if I find out something is wrong? I mean, that is an empowerment that you need to really take on yourself. That is the first and fundamental step that you need to do, is to take charge of your own health. Number two is that we are seeing that because of the climate induced weather patterns, we will need to also modify our life and our lifestyles. So during heat waves, if there are opportunities for you to reduce your commute to work from home, or to have shared mobility where you're with another person at least, so that if something were to happen, you have help at hand. Those are type of small fixes that one can easily do in case of a climate crisis or an issue. During air pollution, if you are particularly vulnerable, there are very good techniques that are available, whether it is not to improve the indoor air quality, to not leave windows open, to better monitor health of the elderly in the house, and so on and so forth. As the medical community, a lot of information goes out, which I think should be followed, and you're advised to really look at it very seriously. Lastly, it's also about choices. I think we are a uneven country. And what I mean by that is, we during the winters in Delhi, we will have barbecue parties and enjoy ourselves. But the security guard outside the venue, when they light a little bonfire, we say, you're contributing towards the poor air. We have to become more mindful about our choices, and I think that is the only way we can really improve the situation at hand. And at the community level, I think again, resident welfare associations is such a good vehicle for people to really put out what they want to do in terms of improving various parameters. So I think as an invention, the RWA is very powerful, and I think it should be used. And there again, I would strongly urge the young to make their voices heard on how we can improve, some of these issues that are easily addressable. And lastly, I think as an informed citizen, as a person who has a voice, we have so many means, and I'm thankful to you for having this platform being made available, so that voices are heard, and hopefully voices are heard in the right context, to know that citizens are demanding something, citizens are demanding action, or that this is a priority for them. So let's not look at stopgap, let's not look at near term, and let's not only look at personal. Let's broaden this up a bit. And the only personal thing that, if there's one thing that you can do, is please get that health check, and know your current status. Because today medical technology and the medical gray cells are strong enough to actually help predict how the impact of climate change is going to impact you as an individual, and therefore you can be empowered to take those choices, because it is important for you to be healthy, to have to have that fullness of life, but also to contribute towards the growth and development of India and the global commons.
Karan, you made some excellent points, but are these preventive healthcare checkups, accessible to everyone? Because what I know is that it is a bit costly. So when a middle class says that, I don't really see any problem with my body, or I'm doing okay, and hence I don't think I should go spend my money on a preventive healthcare checkup, and would rather use that money for some of the basic amenities that I need in my day-to-day life. I mean, I get that logic. It's a difficult question and a situation to probably respond, as much as I advocate getting, checkups done regularly.
I'm
What do
happy
we
to
do about
respond.
that situation?
I'm happy to respond. If you're a taxpayer, you get 5,000 rupees benefit shaved off your taxable income if you take a health insurance policy from the premium that is deducted. If you take a health policy, in most policies, a preventive health check is baked in. So no excuse there. If you are a person who does not have the economic means, the government runs a national program, a screening program on three basic diseases: diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancers. You can go to any center and get these tests done, and they would be a good starting point for you. So no excuses there. Third, if you don't have either of those means available to you, the cost of a basic health check is nothing more than, between 500 rupees to 1,000 rupees for the, and this is once a year, so this is your annual cost. Now weigh that against the cost of poor health and ill health. And poor health and ill health can be priceless, because it can lead to penury, it can lead to people falling below the poverty line, and it can lead to ruin of a familial environment. So no excuses there. I feel we should take better decisions, and that includes investing in health, not spending on health.
Absolutely. I think this information will definitely help a lot of people listening this show. And yes, I think we do have a lot of means available to us. We should certainly explore those options, uh, because we are just stepping into that peak poor air quality in Delhi NCR. What are those, couple of things that we can do to protect ourselves? I use mask. Honestly, it helps. Some days are really bad, but what else we can do to protect ourselves?
Yes, so masks are a good intervention, and again, they also help in the flu season to help contain the spread of flu. So generally, they are good when you are out and about. But at the same time, there are opportunities for you to keep your normal day-to-day routine. So if you are exercising outside, if it is possible to continue your exercise indoors, or to even join a gym if it is available. Again, I'm giving a very urban centric response here. This may not be true for many people, but again, for that limited section, continue with your exercise. People tend to give up physical activity because of poor air, but it is generally said that you should continue with the activity, obviously not exposing yourself to the poor air, because that helps keep cardiovascular performance that goes. We have to also carpool a lot more. We have to make sure that we use public transport a lot more, and we can use shared mobility also. I think there are again options in the shared mobility space which have a lower carbon option available to you, so make that choice is the other one. Lastly, I think you need to have a conversation with your physician, and please do not rely only on Google and whatnot. Don't chat GPT your symptoms. Ask them, that my health status. You've seen my health status in the past 4 5 years. You know what air quality is like. What is your experience telling you that I should be doing this, or this more or this less? I think you can make good with that advice, and it'll be specific for specific people. Obviously, the elderly, I think they should have reduced exposure to bad air quality. Now, that does not mean only air exposure to outdoor air. Indoor air is also sometimes found to be even more polluted than outdoor air. So you have to take steps which include a clean home environment, no dust, as little dust as possible, because that circulates. If you are cooking at home, you should make sure that at least exhaust or hoods are available within the kitchen space, so that that poorer air is actually being filtered out. A lot of people tend to leave windows open during the winter because it's a more pleasant time of the year, but as AQI goes very poor during those times, it is safer not to. The jury is still out on air purifiers. I won't like to offer my comment on that, but I see no harm as an adjunct. Probably, even if it doesn't do any good, it won't do any harm. But again, as I said, the caveat is that the jury is still out. And also, this is an underreported thing, which is the importance of a nutritious diet. And people just sort of say, well, you doctors say this for everything, but actually it is seen that green leafy vegetables, fruits, and legumes actually improve cardiovascular performance, and therefore our resistance improves towards things like poorer air. So that's one bit of advice that you would look at in terms of your diet. And lastly, people tend to sort of reduce their water intake during the winters, and this leads to oftentimes congestions and other things which can make things worse. So make sure that you're well hydrated, and this could mean by other means as well, including hot drinks that you can take during the day. So a mix and combination of those, but the options are available to us. It's the best we can do in a situation which frankly needs far more to be done at the community and at the national level than just at an individual's.
Thank you so much, Karan. I think these are some really important and very doable tips that you have provided to us. Before I close this discussion, because we have spoken a lot about what we can do, what we should be doing, what government is doing, I'm sure somewhere within the Indian community we are doing things right. Uh, can you share some examples of those communities or those cities where we are doing things right and it is showing results? One city that I have only read about, I'm yet to visit, is Indore. How they are managing their waste recycling and everything. Do we have such examples?
Yes, we have. Indore is the leading example in solid waste management happening at the community level, segregation of waste. And for a lot of people, how does that link to climate change? Well, if you don't segregate your waste correctly, the amount of methane that is discharged from food waste it can be quite toxic. So if you segregate it correctly, at least it gets put into the right method of of disposal. The other example is of Surat, where again they have very good controls in terms of solid waste management, building bylaws, and the implementation of it. And the community is really, very supportive of those type of interventions. We have examples even in Delhi where the resident welfare associations have taken steps towards better rainwater harvesting, towards reuse of stored water for things like gardening and greening their own areas that are within their charge, and even adopting public parks and putting some effort to make sure that the green cover improves. We're also seeing this at the in the private sector, where massive amounts of greening is happening in large industrial parks or office buildings, where a lot more of these building and investments are taking place to make the building at least neutral or have the most reduced impact that is possible. So again, there are pockets of these excellence which we are seeing across the individual community, locality, and let's say the Indian private sector. It needs to come together to become a holistic sort of model. And again, you would say that I'm an optimist, but we're getting there.
I think we have to be optimist about all of this, because being a pessimist certainly is not helping. It is only adding to the fear. And so, honestly, that was the inspiration behind doing this. A lot of people are already talking about climate, its impact, solutions. But certainly, 1.4 billion population, we need more people to do something like this so that more and more people can understand what's happening here. But yes, I
When you
think
spoke to me
there
the
are.
first time around it, sorry to break your chain of thought, I told you you must do it, and it is for this reason. So I'm glad you did.
Thank you so much. And the idea is really to try and help simplify these conversation as much as possible, and have more people, be aware of what is climate change and its impact, and what we can do at an individual level and at a community level. Certainly, a lot of responsibility is with the government, with the private sector, with the corporates, industries, but we also have a say on this. So, certainly, we need to be very much part of every discussion. Thank you so much, Karan, for making the time and helping us with all this information, breaking down some of the complex topics, and most importantly, providing some very doable, very easy tips that we can practice, especially for the Delhiites who are stepping into this toxic air sort of season. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Arpita. Absolute pleasure to be on the show.
I know it's hard to think that our everyday actions are contributing to climate change, but the truth is they are. Just like we take medicines as soon as we feel unwell, we need climate action now, not later. Every day we wait makes the problem harder to treat. So let's start today. Whether it is reducing waste, cutting down on energy use, or simply being more mindful, every small step makes a difference. And I promise, together, these small actions add up to something powerful.